Welcome to GovCom Unfiltered, where your journey through the labyrinth of federal contracting begins. I'm Alexa Choi, your guide and host on this epic adventure. Here, we dive deep into the heart of government contracting, shedding light on the heroic tales of those who navigate its complex terrain. Our mission? To bring you closer to the action, revealing the critical steps, triumphant victories, and occasional pitfalls that our intrepid adventurers face. Your journey into the world of government contracting starts now, and we could not be happier to have you with us. Let's embark on this adventure together. Thank you for tuning in to GovCom Unfiltered. Today, our guest is Mac, the CEO of Vultron, and he's one of our sponsors. This is my first time interviewing a sponsor. I'm so excited. Mac, thank you for being here today.
I'm excited to be here.
So if you don't mind, introduce yourself, and then we're going to jump right into the first question.
Yeah, so hey everyone, I'm Mac, the founder and CEO of Vultron. I spent my career at the intersection of defense, engineering, and applied AI. So before founding Vultron, I was an early team member at Anduril, where I led the development of the autonomous defense systems and deployed in real-world missions. Prior to that, I worked at Robinhood and Google, building large-scale retrieval and recommendation systems.
Wow, Anduril, a small company, never heard of it. So if you haven't heard of it, you're kind of sleeping under a rock right now. All right, so let's get into it. First question, looking back at your journey, who was the one person who opened an unexpected door for you, and how has that influenced how you help other people now?
That's a great question. So I actually have two pivotal moments where unexpected doors were open. So growing up, my family envisioned a traditional path for me. They wanted me to become a doctor.
Of
But
course.
one of my cousins actually suggested I explore being a software engineer and the idea of working at places like Google, Microsoft, or Facebook. And really what opened the door for me there was I kept an open mind. I started teaching myself how to code and found that I was really passionate about it, really enjoyed it. And 2 years later, I landed my dream job at the time, which was at Google. And there was that summer where the second pivotal moment happened where a friend introduced me to the world of startups and it opened a much broader view of what was possible. So growing up in the Midwest, landing a job at Google, it was everyone's dream. But hearing all the adventures and excitement around joining a startup,
Right.
it really opened the door for me to kind of give that an open mind and take the chance there. So really from those experiences, what I've carried forward from that moment was really just understand the power of keeping the doors open and possibilities and how one push in the right direction can really change someone's life. So those moments really shaped how I work with others today. I really focus on what people are capable of rather than what they lack. I try to
Right.
recognize everyone's untapped strengths, find ways to help them step in environments where they can thrive. And really the goal is to just open doors for others the same way that someone opened the door for me.
I love that. When you were interviewing at Google, did they ask you how many golf balls can fit in a semi truck?
They did not. So those I interviewed right at the time where they were deprecating that style of interview. So it
Oh,
was really
really?
there.
You probably prepared for it though. You were like, I have an answer.
Yep. I was doing all the research at the time and pulling it up.
That's awesome. Well, I really love your answer to that question. And before we jump into the next question, tell us a little bit about Voltron because it is actually a really cool intersection of your entire background. And I think, some of the folks that are listening might not know anything about it because, you guys are not as flashy as some of the ones that are out there. So I would love for you just to take like 2 minutes and tell us what is it?
Yeah. So what we're building at Ultron. Voltron is really we call it the enterprise operating system. So where we're starting today is federal revenue growth, which is heavily involved in federal growth, capture, BD, and proposals. And the reason why we laid a little lower for a long time is we understand building AI is really hard. So we spent a lot of time building the foundation before we went to the market.
Right. Right. So essentially, Voltron is a tool that automates some of those processes, right? And makes the BD capture proposal process easier.
Exactly. So what we understand is these organizations have incredibly complex processes that's been
Mhm.
built there for decades, right? No one wants to
Right.
change those. Change management is really hard. So what we built is actually a system that can help integrate and adapt to your organizational processes. So no matter how you do things, right? Our team sits down with you, maps out all your processes and see where we can help you save time and create the most value so that you can remain competitive and fast in the market.
Wow. Let me tell you why I love this. I'm a firm believer that it's people process technology, not technology process people. And so you're saying you sit down, learn what the way the organization does it, and then maps a more effective process and then brings in the technology. Like that's brilliant.
Exactly. We share the same belief here at Voltron.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. All right. Let's jump into the next question. So when you think about your network, it sounds like you've got some really great people in there. What's been your most effective approach for not just building, connections, but actually turning these connections into meaningful relationships? Because I feel like the delta between there is
Mhm.
where a lot of folks missed the boat.
Yeah, I think going back to all my connections that I've built that were at a much deeper level, my approach has always been pretty simple. I always just offer to help and support people wherever I can, whether it's like giving them advice, making introductions, or just being available sometimes and not really expecting anything in return. And I think one of the biggest things that benefited me was I genuinely enjoy seeing others succeed and finding opportunities that they're passionate about. Because I found that when I found what I was passionate about, it really changed my life. So that mindset has really just paid off in so many unexpected ways. Like many of my relationships I built have ended up providing incredible value back to me, especially when I needed it the most. And there's also a compounding effect to this. So by supporting
Right.
a wide range of people and being someone that most people turn to for advice, I actually gain a lot of visibility into what's happening across industries, markets, and their organizations, which really helps me keep my ears close to the ground. So
Right.
really what you get is you get to accumulate a lot of knowledge that's not publicly available. And this has been a huge advantage in my career and the work we do day to day at Vultron as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell everybody that the riches are in the niches. But also, like, your name has to be spoken in behind closed doors, right? Because people will always ask, like, "Who do you trust? Who do you know?" I couldn't begin to tell you how many people have hit me up
Mhm.
asking me like, "Hey, Alexa, who has the best proposal automation tool?" I mean, G2X has one. It's
Mhm.
not great. So I never actually say G2X. We have one. I'll show it to I'll show it to you, but we're actually rebuilding it. But I do know that Voltron has a great one. So I always tell them to check you guys out. So yeah, it's part of like being there to help others and then making sure that your name is the one in the room where people are talking about trust. And that has to be built on something that takes time.
Definitely. And tying back to what you were saying just now is like you have to be incredibly honest, right? So people like
Yeah.
who are genuine and honest. And even if it doesn't benefit my own life, I want to make sure when I talk to them, I'm benefiting them the most.
Right. And that kind of comes back to sales too. Because when you're trying to find a solution that might work for a company, if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I always think about that as like a lifelong salesperson. I'm always like, okay, it's better to walk away from a deal than to have a customer find out that they weren't a good fit for it.
Exactly. You have to sell something you believe in and you have to believe
Yeah.
that it will help serve the customer, then give them the
Right.
outcomes that they need.
Yeah, exactly. I really going back to what you had said before I jump into the next question, I loved what you said about being passionate about startup because as I'd posted on LinkedIn today, I was talking about coming back to G2X, and walking away from a career as an executive as in a beauty and
Mhm.
capture. And it really was doing exactly that, right? Choosing the startup life over the, comfortable position of knowing that you're, working on a growth team. So what is it about the startup life that really fired you up?
I think the biggest thing for me was I see my life as like a big adventure. I'd say that. So given that, I think there's something about startups of being an underdog and always kind of
Right.
going through the day-to-day battles, the fights, and not knowing what tomorrow will bring, all the open opportunities that you can learn. And I think
Right.
it probably comes from my sports background. So I had a sports background growing up, played a lot of sports, and where you were always the underdog, the mindset stuck with me there and chasing that win, doing the work, and betting on myself when it really counted.
I love it. What sports were you doing?
I played football, hockey, lacrosse. I've done many other sports, but main two were football and hockey.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Yeah, it's funny that I've interviewed so many people on this podcast, and a lot of times that drive to win, the hunger, the competitiveness, like even like how do you approach all of these in the middle of living a very hectic life comes down to like having a background in sports. You wouldn't believe the connections.
Definitely. And like when you think about startup, all the odds are stacked against you, right? And
Yeah.
when you're in a sports game, when you're playing that championship team, number one seed, you don't go in with the idea that you're going to lose. You're still going in, doing everything you can with the chance that you can win. And I think that mindset carries really well into startups.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think back to Ted Lasso. I don't know if you've seen Ted Lasso. Have you seen Ted Lasso?
I haven't.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you gotta check it out. It's about soccer. Alrighty, let's jump into the next question. So, what is a risk you took that seemed crazy at the time, but it fundamentally changed your trajectory? And how did you have the confidence to really take that leap?
Oh, that's a great question. So circling back to the first question you actually asked me, those unexpected doors I was talking about. One of the
Mhm.
biggest inflection point was after I landed my dream job at Google at the time. So I worked super hard for a few years, taught myself how to code, compete in every way I can to land that job. And coming someone from my background, growing up in the Midwest, getting there felt surreal. Like leaving that behind to join a startup seemed crazy to a lot of people, including me.
Right.
My family was like, "What are you doing? Like, I've never heard of these startups. What are these companies you're talking about?" Right. And I remember the first startup I was interning at. It was, I think we're working out of a house that was like renovated to look like an office. But the biggest theme there was just really finding a way to make the leap to have greater impact and accelerate my own learning. It completely changed the trajectory of my career and led to the opportunities that I have today that I would have never imagined.
Do you think that being brave when you went from like Google to the startup gave you the confidence to start your own company?
It definitely did. So it's much easier when you're already living the day to day, have seen what's done and what it takes to build a company a few times to feel like
Right.
you can also do it as well. And I think tying back to the point that you were mentioning about what was the confidence there, I never really viewed it directly as confidence. I always lived my life around like doing all the things that excited me most. So when I got to Google, it was very exciting from a outside perspective, right? But once you're really
Mm.
in there, I lost that sense of adventure I had my whole life. It felt like a job. I was always blocked, things
Right.
were moving slow. And I just really liked that adventure and going through those battles. So when I found that I didn't have the same fire in me anymore, I had to keep looking for what's next. And because I was able to find that in the startups I was looking at, it didn't feel like it was a confidence thing. It just felt like the right thing to do.
Right. Right. Well, I love all these lessons. I just feel like I'm picking up so many lessons from you right now. So when you started your own business, Voltron, right? You actually decided to play the video game on hard mode because you didn't start a government contracting business. You
Mhm.
decided to start a business that was kind of not only a newer technology, but a new concept. Like you had said, people have been having these BD capture proposal processes for years. This hasn't
Mhm.
changed in maybe since they were writing proposals on stone walls. Like these processes have been in place. So I'm just kind of like curious, like what excited you about AI and proposals? Like, was it because there were so many challenges at your previous company, like seeing the ball being dropped so many times between the processes? You were like, we can do this better. We can do this with AI. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So it was like in hindsight, really. So when I was leaving my last company, Start One, I was exploring selling back into the DoD, so government contractor myself. And I
Right.
just ran into all the same pain points, but as a one man team. And I was talking to a lot of people in my network at the time. I actually ended up building this tool first to scale myself, just to make myself more efficient, allow myself to do the work better. And as I was doing more and more of this work, I kept adding and extending to it because what I found really quickly was every organization has their processes for this, but something that's always unique is it always changes. There's always a new
Right.
fire. There's always something unexpected that happens. There's always you just can't predict what's happening. And when I said like that's really important to know because when I think about building Voltron, we take that approach, right? Because there's
Right.
always surprises. Everyone's doing fire drills last minute. Everyone's staying up long nights, long weekends under a lot of pressure. There's just so much that goes into this, and it's so
Right.
hard to do everything that you need to build something that can actually be highly adaptable. So when new surprises
Right.
come in, the system should be able to actually help you support those surprises so that you're not spending days changing the work you've already done.
Right. Well, what I love about this is that it sounds different than what's out there right now. Because I've seen a lot of these tools and I feel like a lot of times it's like, upload a PWS statement of work, get a chat GPT wrapper, run it around it, and then kick out a response. You know what I mean? And I just feel like that doesn't really solve any of the real pain points of, like you had said, what happens when the government changes things? What happens when the page limit changes or they want a random font you've never heard of or, any of these things, it's just there's a lot that goes into it. Or, your photos have to have a 12-point font in Times New Roman. Yeah, right?
Definitely. New surprises every
So
day, right? I mean, we see some of these customers we work with on opportunity. We've seen 46 amendments in a single opportunity across 30 days.
wow, I'm not even surprised. I remember one time I was bidding a big NASA deal and the Q&A came out and like the RFP was due in like a week and it was a 66-page response of Q&A. And I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, this is pretty typical. Okay, guess I have my weekend reading planned. So let's jump into the next question. Looking ahead at the next few years, what emerging opportunities do you see that others might be overlooking, and how can people position themselves to take advantage of them?
Well, I'm obviously biased, but I
Oh,
believe AI is going to be one of the most transformative revolutions of our time. And we're
oh,
really still in the early innings. Like today, most organizations are using AI as co-pilots for no tasks, if they're using AI at all. But we're quickly approaching a world where agentic systems can actually autonomously execute complex and then workflows. So I think one of the biggest things that people are overlooking today is understanding the differences of what is AI and how to actually evaluate it. Not all AI is created equal. Many organizations still evaluate AI like it's traditional software, but the way we view it at Voltron is AI is much closer to labor than traditional software. It's not really about
really?
like looking at how many features a product has. It's not about it's more about actually the output and the quality of what the AI can
Right,
actually do. So the way we always think about internally is like you don't really hire someone just because they have a skill. You hire them because they're exceptional at that skill and they can reliably get the job done. And
right.
you spend a lot of time and money to hire these people, and we don't view AI as any different than that. But
Right.
what we're learning actually in the market is building AI, great AI is really hard. So we invest millions of dollars each year in R&D because
Right.
that's where we believe the long-term differentiation and advantage will come from.
Yeah, wow. This is really interesting answer. Okay. All right, Mac. So that being said, which one is your favorite LLM right now?
Ooh, that's a tough question. So I think LLMs are there's a lot of them, and they
Yeah.
all built for very unique tasks. Like a different model might be better at writing like a human or understanding your structure of tone. A better
Right.
one might be good at reasoning or understanding what it knows and doesn't know. So
Mm,
something we do at Voltron is we take that abstraction away from the user, where they don't have to worry about what models they're
right.
picking and selecting, and we essentially build that for them, right? And that we will route it to the best models for the task that we have evaluated, tuned, and trained these models to understand those tasks.
Really? So the person on the front end trying to build this proposal isn't going to be like, today I'm going to use Claude, tomorrow I'm going to use this because of that. Like actually, depending on what the task is, your system automatically just picks it and does the right one.
Yeah, we essentially self-curated them and we essentially built our own as well. So, for example, certain tasks you need high precision, high accuracy. You can't just get a generic summary of a document, right?
Right.
With 300 pages, traditional models are going to miss most of the key points. In those scenarios, based off the user trying to take that action, we can identify that is a very high accuracy task. So we will invest the time to pull together a model, find anything that's relevant, and scan each line of the document like a real human would.
Wow. Wow. That's so cool.
And I'll say like a big thing that we're also thinking about too is if your product is still depending like heavily on complex UI manual workflows, it's likely just compensating for over reliance on these off the shelf foundation models. I think the best team are putting the energy and resources on building intelligent agentic systems because that's where the real opportunities lie over the next decade.
So are you telling me, Nick, that you yourself as the CEO are still hands on the keyboard, like doing R&D and research and building and helping guide the company from like a technological standpoint, not just outselling and growing?
I'll say like I'm very fortunate to have put together a world-class team from top companies from the likes of Google, Anduril, so on and so forth. So I was able to step out of the deep technical, but I'm still very involved from like a high level, where are we going type of direction? Because we're still, like I said, in the early innings of AI. So we have to set that direction for what we're building for our users and what we want to bring to the market.
Wow. Yeah, that's actually pretty great. I know some of your team members and they are pretty great,
Hmm,
actually.
good to hear.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So now that we've talked about kind of like the opportunity being agentic AI and the future belongs to the builders,
Mm.
not the borrowers. I read that yesterday and was like, wow, it's pretty powerful. What do you think are you most excited about when it comes to innovation, and what is the role that you hope Voltron plays in that space? Like, when it comes to capturing like the BD capture, especially proposals, proposals are not that sexy. It's kind of like the how the sausage is made part, right? So, where do you really think innovation is going to bring you in the future?
Yeah, I think there's two key things I'm most excited about. When we say like BD capture proposals, we view that as one integrated system, right? Because proposals aren't anything without strong capture, strong BD, right? And building all that
Right.
intelligence and make sure it's tightly integrated to the customer's voice when you're writing it, their benefits, and really understanding your customer and showing that. So something Voltron does is actually help integrate all of that so that you can actually take months, months or years of actual like BD, learnings, capture, and actually instantly integrate that into your proposal. But taking a step back, I think really what I'm most excited about is circling back to that the rise of agentic AI, like AI that doesn't really just generate outputs, but can actually understand your
Right.
organic and unique processes and autonomously drive real work forward. We're finding that models, AI, research has become better and better. Like models should now be able to understand your organization. Where do you go for the data? What does the data mean? Where does that data live in your company? And actually understand that similar to what humans would do, right, within your organization and learn from how you adapt to it over time. So the way I see kind of like our role playing is like we're starting with federal growth teams, right? So proposal,
Right.
capture, BD. But really where we're seeing this as a large opportunity is bringing this to the whole, industry because like I said, proposal, capture, BD are just one highly intense, complicated, high stakes process. But this
Right.
happens everywhere within the organization beyond just those aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really, when it came to G2X as well, we had a similar vision where it was like, let's not solve one problem, but let's solve the overall challenges that, government contractors have as a whole. Contract management, right? Recruiting, BD, capture, growth, and think about it rather than one piece at a time, but like a whole ecosystem.
Exactly.
Um,
Like, for
yeah, exactly.
example, last week, one of our customers put out 300 resumes using Voltron. So that's
What?
the example where you mentioned with recruiting, they need to recruit fast. They had upcoming opportunities. So they want to get ahead of it. And they just put together resumes and job descriptions.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Then that's the really the power of AI, right? So let me ask you a couple of questions based on this one. First one is probably pretty easy for you to answer. Do you think that we should be like worried about like the whole agentic AI thing and like, robots taking over humans and everybody's jobs gonna be gone and everybody freak out and run around like our hair's on fire?
I think from my perspective, we're quite far from that. And it's not something to really worry about because really like when I talk to our customers, they always want to be focusing on the most strategic tasks and focus on high impact work, but they're
Right.
often bogged down by the more tedious processes of like finding where content lives, where did I put that information, where's how do I log this into our CRM? So there's a lot of tedious and manual tasks that these organizations go through. And there's a huge opportunity for anyone who's already adopting AI now to find where they're spending the most time, automate those processes, and really put your resources on the highest impact work that drives your organization's revenue forward.
Right. Yep. Nope. I love that. Is there anything else that you can leave us with from maybe just kind of like a word of encouragement to people that are thinking about starting their own business or thinking about working for that startup that are like maybe they're considering two different jobs right now and one of them is a startup and one of them is like, a big integrator. Like, maybe you could just give some folks some inspiration behind like what you would do.
Yeah, I would say just look at the people that you're going to be working with and think about where you want to be 10 years from now. Think about
Right.
like what you're going to look back at and what's really going to make you excited. I think when people are making decisions, there's always so much noise in the world, and it's easy to let other people make the decisions for you. So I
Right.
always recommend people start with writing down and being very clear about what you want. And I think it's always very clear to people what they need to do after that.
Right. No, I think that's really great advice for sure. I love how you said that you live your life like an adventure. Do you ever take random side quests? Like if something popped up and you were like, I'm building Vultron right now, but I also kind of want to start this other business too at the same time. Do you ever do that?
I am a very 0 or 200% person.
Oh,
So
you are?
when I'm into something, I will invest time that I don't even have into something. So that said, it's short answer is no. I'm usually really locked in on one thing that I'm passionate about. And if I'm no longer passionate about it, then I would find something that I am passionate about.
I love that. It probably speaks greatly to your success currently too, I think. Being super laser focused. I think that's a challenge this day and age when you're bombarded with everybody trying to steal your attention all day long.
Yeah, there's just so many opportunities every day, right? So you have to kind of find the things that excites you most, where you want to be in 10 years, like I said, and just focus on that one thing at a time.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, and thank you for listening to GovCom Unfiltered. Until next time, Matt, really appreciate you.
Of course, thank you for having me today, Alexa.